Yeah, welcome. So we'll be discussing about multi-threading in Java in this lecture series. So we'll be discussing basically these topics. We'll be discussing the introduction to multi-threading, and followed by that we'll be discussing the two ways to create threads in Java. One is by extending the class thread. The second method is by implementing the interface runnable. And then we'll be discussing something called as synchronization, thread synchronization, which is used to ensure that two threads are working in a coordinated way. So we'll be understanding what is meant by thread synchronization, and also we'll be discussing with a small example program like how to create synchronized threads. So this is the objective of this lecture series. So let us start with introduction to multi-threading. So before starting multi-threading, we have to define certain things. We have to define what is concurrency, what is parallel execution, and what is a process, and what is a thread. So we will be defining these four things, and then we will be discussing what is how multi-threading is done in Java. So let us start with concurrency. What is meant by concurrent execution? There is a difference between concurrent execution and parallel execution. So what's the difference? So that's what we are trying to understand. Assume that the computer has only one CPU. The computer that you have has only one CPU, and you want to execute three processes or three tasks simultaneously. Say these are three tasks: task 1, task 2, and task 3, or you can call it as process 1, process 2, and process 3, anything, right? Now you have only one processor, okay? So this is a typical processor which we use, right? Now, now what a typical computer does in the sense, it is not that first it will execute T1 completely and then it will execute T2 completely and then it will execute T3. No, that won't happen. Rather, the processor assigns some quantum of time for each threads. So it may allocate 3 milliseconds for each threads. So in that case, the processor will first execute the task T1 for 3 milliseconds. Once this 3 milliseconds is elapsed, the processor will switch. This is called as context switching. The processor will switch from the task T1 to T2. Then it will execute T2 for 3 milliseconds. Once this duration is elapsed, again the processor will context switch from the task T2 to T3. Again it will execute T3 for 3 milliseconds. Once that duration is elapsed, again the processor will context switch from T3 to T1. So this process continues until a particular task finishes execution. Okay, so this is called as concurrent execution. This is called as concurrent execution. Why it is called as concurrent execution? Now assume that a user is sitting here. The user is the one who is executing all these three tasks. Now with respect to the user feels as if these three tasks are running parallelly, because he might have opened these three tasks in three different windows, and less than a second he is getting some response for every task. So user believes that these threads were running simultaneously, but in fact they are not running simultaneously. Actually the CPU is context switching at a very faster rate from one task to another task. So as the context switch is happening at a faster rate, the user is in the illusion that it is getting executed simultaneously or parallelly. So this type of execution is called as concurrent execution. This type of execution is called as concurrent execution. Okay. Whereas coming to parallel execution, with parallel execution really you have more than one CPU. So nowadays we have multi-core computers with more than one CPU in a single chip. So assume that your computer has 3 cores. Say it has 3 processors, P1, P2 and P3. These are the processors. Okay. Now if you want to execute three tasks, say T1, T2 and T3, these three are the tasks which you want to execute simultaneously. Say user wants to execute all these three tasks all these three tasks he has opened in different windows and he want to execute. Now as you have three processes, T1 can be assigned to processor 1, T2 can be assigned to processor 2, T3 can be assigned to processor 3. Now, in this case, there is no context switch. Processor 1 is executing only T1, processor 2 is executing only T2, and processor 3 is executing only T3, the task 3. Now, it is really parallelism. It is really T1, T2 and T3 are getting executed at the same time. So, this type of execution is called as parallel execution. Okay, fine. Now, coming to process. What is a process? A process is called as a program under execution, and generally processes are treated as heavyweight entities. Why heavyweight entities? Assume that there is a process P1 which is currently getting executed by the processor or by the CPU. So there is another process P2 which is waiting. Now we have only one CPU, only one processor. So the CPU, as we have already discussed, there will be some time slice. CPU will execute this process for say 2 milliseconds or 4 milliseconds, whatever it may be. After that, the CPU should context switch to the next process, that is P2. But this context switch will be done by operating system. Who will do this context switch? It will be done by the operating system. And this context switch is not an easy task. It is little tricky task. So it is called as heavyweight. Because of this context switching, the processes are called as heavyweight. Because when the control is transferred from one process to another process, the state of the process should be saved. The state of the process should be saved, because again when this process comes for execution, it should continue from where it was left previously. So its state information, which is generally available in a set of registers called PSW, program status word, this information should be stored in some part of the memory or in stack. So operating system will ensure that every state information of this process is stored here properly. Then only it can context switch from process, then only it can make the CPU to context switch from process 1 to process 2. Again it will execute process 2 for say 2 milliseconds. Then once again it want to context switch to process 1. Now once again, before context switching, the state information of process 2 should be saved, and that will be available in PSW. We will call this PSW2, this is PSW1. Again this should be saved, because when it comes back, process 2 also should start executing from where it left previously. Okay, so now when the control goes to process 1, this whatever the previously it is saved, now it will be loaded back, and again it will start executing. So all these operations should happen at the background and operating system should take care of that. Because of these things, the process is generally treated as a heavyweight entity. So context switching from one process to another process, it actually involves lot of software and hardware resources to be used by the operating system. Because of that, it is called as a heavyweight thing. Whereas threads called as lightweight processes. Threads are called as lightweight processes. So for example, if you have 3 processes currently running, process 1, process 2 and process 3, these are the 3 processes which are currently running. Say you have only one CPU, now CPU will obviously context switch from one process to another process depending on some time slice. Further, this process can have threads. In process 1 you may have 2 threads, T1 and T2. In process 2 there may be 3 threads, T1, T2 and T3. In process 3 there may be only one thread, say T4. Okay, now say for example the processor is allocating, this is T4. Okay, say the processor is allocating 4 millisecond for process 1, 5 millisecond for process 2 and 2 millisecond for process 3. Now out of this 4 millisecond, this process 1 may allocate 2 millisecond for thread 1 and another 2 millisecond for thread 2. Now after 2 millisecond, the control should be transferred from thread 1 to thread 2. This will be done by the process itself, process 1 itself. There is no involvement of operating system here. And this context switching is done easily, because this state information you need not store any different location of memory. Whatever the memory available for process 1, here itself this state information will be stored, and this context switching will be done by the process itself. So threads are, because of this reason, threads are called as lightweight process. So switching from one thread to another thread is a easier task rather than from switching from one process to another process. Because of these reasons, threads are called as lightweight. Okay. So we are going to discuss about multi-threading in Java. That is how to create more than one threads, and how to ensure that all these threads are getting executed either in a concurrent fashion or in parallel fashion. This concurrency or parallelism is not in our control. It depends on the number of CPUs available. If you have only one CPU, these multiple threads will execute concurrently. If you have more than one CPU, these multiple threads will execute parallelly. So why we are discussing multi-threading? In the sense to effectively utilize the CPU, central processing unit, or the processor. Okay. So multi-threading will ensure that the processor will get effectively utilized in spite of whether you have more than one processor or you have only one processor. Right. Okay. Now let us try to understand what is the thread life cycle. The thread life cycle, in a thread, the life cycle of a thread contains 5 states: new, ready, running, blocked, and terminated. What are they? So initially, when a thread is just created, it is called as a new state or a newborn state. Once the thread is created in Java, immediately we will call the start method. So once this start method is called, the thread is said to be in runnable state. Okay, this is with respect to the Java environment, it is in runnable state. But with respect to OS, this runnable state again further contains 2 states. One is ready state, the other one is running state. Okay. So initially we can assume that once the start method is called, the thread is in the ready state. So this ready state is something like a queue. It is basically a queue where all threads will be stored. Like say thread 1, thread 2, so thread 3, like that, whatever the threads, it will be available in this queue. And there is something called as dispatcher in operating system dispatcher. This is the one which takes one thread and will assign to the CPU. Okay. So there are many scheduling algorithms. Based on that, this allocation happens. So one of the generally used algorithm is called as round robin algorithm, which simply says that whatever is in the front of the queue, assign that to the CPU. So in that case, T1 will be assigned to the CPU. So processor will execute T1 in a round robin fashion. There will be some time slice, only that much time it will execute. So processor may say, let us assume the time slice is 2 milliseconds. Now the processor will execute T1 for 2 milliseconds. Once this 2 milliseconds is over, it will again keep T1 in the end of the ready queue. And now, who is in the front of the ready queue? T2. So processor will execute T2 for another 2 milliseconds. Once the time is elapsed, it will keep T2 in the end of the ready queue, and it will take the next thread, that is T3. Again it will execute T3 for 2 milliseconds. Once the duration is over, it will keep T3 at the end of the ready queue, and again it will fetch T1. So like that, this process continues until the particular thread completes, finishes execution, or it enters into a wait state, something like that. Okay. So from the running state, the thread can enter into a wait state. So this can happen if the running thread executes an IO operation. If it wants to perform an IO operation, then IO operation, until the IO is completed, the thread has to wait. So during that time, the CPU can be utilized to execute another thread. So this thread will enter into a state which is called as blocked state or wait state. Okay. Apart from IO operation, a thread can enter into a wait state if it calls the method like sleep or wait. If it calls a method like wait of 1000 milliseconds, means it will wait for 1000 milliseconds. So during that time it will be in wait state. Similarly, you can make a thread to sleep for a certain period of time. Okay. So and a thread in the wait state may again come into runnable state once its IO is completed or its waiting duration is completed. So it won't directly go into the running state. With respect to the Java environment, it is in runnable state, but OS will generally move it to the ready queue. Then whenever its turn comes, it will get the CPU, right? And a running thread, if it has finished executing all instructions in that particular thread, then it may naturally get into terminate state, which is called as the terminating stage. Okay? Or any thread can be terminated by calling the stop method. Like how start method is called, when you call the start method, the thread is started. That is, the newborn thread enters into runnable state. Similarly, the thread in any state can be called upon stop method to terminate the thread. So in a newborn thread, if you call stop, it will get into terminate stage. Similarly, on a running thread, if you call stop, it will get into terminate state. Similarly, on a waiting thread, if you call stop, it will get into the terminate state. So these are the these are the life cycle of threads. So these are the different states the thread crosses during its life cycle. Fine. Okay, now let us discuss like what are the different ways of implementing threads in Java. So basically there are two ways in which multi-threading can be achieved. The first method is by using by extending the class thread. The second method is by implementing the interface runnable. Both these, the thread class and runnable interface, they are available in the package java.lang. Okay, so it is available in this package, which is a default package. You need not import it explicitly. And every Java program contains one thread. Even if it is not a multi-threading program, it contains one thread, and that thread is called as main thread. So main thread is the one which creates all the child thread, and even in non-multi-threading environment, there is a main thread. And when you execute a Java program in the background, you always have this thread running, which is called as garbage collector. So garbage collector is a thread which is always running in the background. Okay. So the main thread is important because this is the one which creates the child thread, and this is the one which will finish the execution at last. That is, it performs the necessary shutdown operations connected with the other threads. So now let us see how to create threads. So as we discussed, threads can be created two ways, either by implementing the runnable interface or by extending the class thread. First we will be discussing like how we can create a multi-threaded program in Java by implementing the runnable interface. So this runnable interface, it contains a method called run. So this runnable is an interface. So this method is an abstract method. So if you want to create a thread by implementing the runnable interface, then the class that which you are using should implement the runnable interface, and you should override this run method. After overriding the run method, then for that class you have to create an object. Okay, let us assume that run. So the object of that class which implemented the runnable interface, let us assume that object as obj. Then further you have to create an object for the class thread. Okay, and for the thread class object, you have to pass this obj as an argument. Okay, so with that you are creating a thread object which is referring to this object or the object which is implementing the runnable interface, right? Now you can call start method upon this thread class object. Okay, so let us discuss this with an example so that we will understand in a better way. Okay, so consider this small Java program which uses multi-threading. So here what we are doing is we are creating a class called checkThread. It implements runnable interface, and here we are overriding the run method. So this is nothing but overriding the run method, and inside this there is nothing but one for loop for int I is equal to 0, I less than 5, I plus plus, and we just display I. That's it. Then this is another class, public class checkDemoThread. Here we are writing the main method, and within try catch we are writing this code. First we are creating an object for the class checkThread, the one which implements the runnable interface. For this we are creating an object. CheckThread ch1 is equal to new checkThread. And then we are creating an object for the class thread. Thread t1 equal to new thread, but as an argument of thread we are passing this ch1, which is nothing but an object of the class checkThread which implements runnable interface. So now we have created a thread object, and this thread object is referring to ch1, which is an object of checkThread class which implements the runnable interface, right? Now on t1 we are calling start method, t1.start. So when you call the start method, actually this t1 is whose object? t1 is thread object of class thread, but it is referring to ch1, which is checkThread. So when you call t1.start, it will actually call the run method of this checkThread. Okay, it will call the run method of checkThread, So this will execute. That's it, right? And then this is the main thread. So this is the main method is nothing but the main thread. Here we don't want the main thread to finish. So we are saying that t1.join, which means that main thread will wait until t1 is completed. This means main thread will wait until t1 is completed, and then we say main thread finished. If you don't include this join, then main thread will first finish. But generally that is not the way. First let us make the other threads to finish, and then we have to complete the main thread. Okay. So if you want to make the main thread to wait until all other threads to finish execution, then we have to include this t1.join. If you have more than one threads, you have to include more than once this statement. Okay. So let me execute this code. Let me clear the screen first. The previous output is here. Now I am saving it. It is already saved. Let me execute. Run. Okay, you can see here we have only two threads. One is T1, the other one is main thread. So T1 is calling the run method, and in run method there is the what you call the for loop, and it is displaying 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And main thread is waiting until T1 completes, so that this main thread finished is coming lost. If I don't give this T1.join, then the main thread will not complete. Main thread will not wait. Main thread will not wait for T1 to complete. So it may complete first. Main thread may finish first, and T1 may finish after executing of main thread. Okay. So let me clear the screen and execute it. So now I have commented this T1.join. Let me execute it. See, now if you see, main thread is finishing first. After that only T1 is finishing. Okay. So but generally that is not a good programming practice. You should make the main thread to complete or finish at last. So generally we don't do that. So we want the main thread to wait, then in that case you have to do this. Okay. So here actually you may not be able to appreciate the multi-threaded feature, because we have only, apart from main thread, we have only one thread. So let me create one more thread. I am creating here one more thread. Thread T2 is equal to new thread. For this check thread also we will create one more object. Check thread ch2 equal to new. Now we have two separate objects for check threads. One is ch1, another one is ch2. T1 is referring to ch1. We will make T2 to refer to ch2. Now we have two threads. Now we are going to start both the threads. T1 dot start, and then we will start T2 dot start. So both the threads will call this run method. T1 will also execute the run method. Start means the run method will be called. T2 also will execute the run method. So 2 times you will get 0 to 5. Everything will be displayed twice. And then we make the main thread to wait until T1 and T2 completes by providing respective join methods. Okay. So let me save this, and I am executing this. Let me clear the screen first. Yeah, because the previous outputs will remove, then we will execute. So if you see the output now, you can see here 0, 0 is coming, because first 0 is from first thread, second 0 is from second thread, again 1, 1, thread 1, thread 2, okay, 2, 2. It need not come in any sequence. That depends on how the context switch is happening, right? So 2, 3 is coming, again 2, 3 is coming. So maybe first 2, 3 corresponds to first thread, and second 2, 3 corresponds to second thread. It can be of any order, or this can be corresponds to second thread, and this can be corresponds to first thread. Okay. So how do we know which thread is executing what? If you want to know that, then you should give thread name also. So in that case, if you want to know the thread name, then we will create one name here, string. I am creating a string object, a string name. Okay. So there is a string name, and I am creating a constructor for this check thread, okay, which takes a string object, string name, some name it takes, and what it does is it assigns this dot name is equal to name. So here we are not going to display only the I, but also we will display the thread name. So we can say that this dot name, that is its name will be, the thread name will be displayed, and then we can display plus what do you call colon and whatever this number. Okay, now what is, which thread is executing what, will come to know, right? Okay. So here also when we call, what we do is we'll give some name. So let us call this as ch1. We'll call ch1 as its name, and we'll call this as ch2 as its name. So now when we execute, no, you will get the thread name also. So I am saving it, I am clearing the screen here, and I am going to run and I am executing. So now you can see here, see, first ch2 is executing, it is not ch1, and it is executing the first iteration of the for loop, so 0. Next ch1 is executing the first iteration of for loop, so that is 0. Next ch2 is executing 1. Again ch2 is continuing, it is executing the for loop, it is going for the second route, okay, 2. So now ch1 is executing the first iteration of the, the second iteration of for loop, which is 1. And now ch2 is executing the fourth iteration of for loop, which is 3. Now ch1 is executing the third iteration of for loop, which is 2. Now ch1 is executing the fourth iteration of for loop, which is 3. Okay. Again ch2 is executing the last iteration of for loop. ch1 is first executing the last iteration. So ch1 here you see continuously it is executing 3 iterations, 2, 3, 4. After that the control goes to ch2, which executes the last iteration, and main thread is waiting for both of them to complete, right? Okay. So this how it switches, that is not in our control, that is with the operating system. Okay, right? So okay, so let us stop here. Okay, so this is without using wait. So in fact actually when you use wait or sleep, it should wait for a certain random amount of time, whatever the time you have given, and it should come back. Okay, but let us discuss that later. So here what we have discussed in the sense, so it is the same execution, so 2 threads are now executing. So like that you can create any number of threads. So what I suggest you in the sense, you modify this code to create more threads, and you can check it out. Okay, let us stop here. Thank you.